Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and today I want to talk about Power Apps and offline entries. So you've gone ahead and built a Power App which is working great. It's a mobile app, so you can use it on your smartphone, but you come into a scenario where you don't have any internet connection, but you still want to go ahead and use your app to go ahead and make a data entry. What happens in that scenario? Does the app even work? And if it doesn't work, what's the workaround for that? So that's going to be the whole focus of this video over here. And what I've done is I've also gone ahead and built the app. The app by itself is very simple. You go ahead and make that add entry, or you hit that add button over there. It has a few data cards. You hit that submit button, and it gets stored in the data source, which in this case is the Azure SQL in the backend. But what I'm going to show you is how I was able to go ahead and manipulate with some expressions over there and actually save it offline. And then the next time you open the app, it checks to see, oh, it has internet connection, so I'm going to go ahead and save the data. I'm going to actually walk you through all of that, the step-by-step, and kind of crack open the app a little bit, see what everything's happening in the back end. That way you actually know what's available over there. Also, all the expressions or the formulas that I've used, that'll be available in the PowerApps user community, so you can go ahead and get that, take that information from there. So before I go ahead and do everything, let me actually go ahead and demonstrate the app to you, both online and offline, so that you actually make sense what's going on over here. Then we'll go ahead and open up the app. So here I've got my iPhone, and as you can see, I've got my Power App. There's a few things I want to show you in here, and I'll kind of walk you through that. So the first thing I do is when I open up the Power App, you will see that I have internet connection. As you can see, it's on the top left. And so because I have internet connection, you actually see all the apps over here. I can show it to you because I'll just keep scrolling and you can see all my apps, and that's just kind of to tell you that, hey, the apps are available because I have internet connection. Now let's go ahead and go to the app and let's test it as well. So here's the app, and I'm going to now, before I make that entry, I want to talk about that online green banner you see on the top. I did that intentionally so that when the end user comes in, they immediately see that, hey, I've got an internet connection, I can go ahead and use the app. Because in a second you're going to see that if there's no internet connection, that's going to change. Now, granted, I did that for this demo, but you could actually do that as a scenario for your app, especially if there's a chance that the users will use it where there's no internet connection. You might actually consider using that feature over there. All right, so I'm going to now go ahead and add an entry over here as a normal entry with an internet connection. And I'll put in, say, Shane Young's name, street. I'll put in Main Street, Boulevard, city, it's a Columbus, state, Ohio, and the notes, adding entry with internet connection. So done, submit. Yes, everything is good. If I go to the view and edit, I'll actually see that entry I just made in. So that's one section of it. Now I'm going to go back home. Let's just get out of this app. Let me even close PowerApps altogether. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into the airplane mode. So in the airplane mode, I basically don't have any internet connection. Don't let that one on the top left that shows the Wi-Fi and the internet, don't let that confuse you. I literally don't have any internet connection. And I'll prove that to you. I'm going to go back to PowerApps. And when I open up PowerApp, you still see some of the apps, but watch it. I'm going to start scrolling. And these are all the apps that you see now. And that's because PowerApps is smart enough to kind of analyze the apps and tell you that, oh, these are the only ones that Daniel can actually use offline. And that's a really good feature I like in PowerApps. But let's continue. I'm going to go ahead and now click on the offline app, that same app which I built, and this time you see the color change on the top of that banner. It changed to red in color, and now it tells you that it's offline. So again, this is for the demo, but you might actually consider adding that to your app. Now I'm going to click on add, and I'll put in Daniel Christian. I'll put in South Boulevard, city, Charlotte, state, North Carolina. It says off, on notes I'm putting it as offline test. Done, submit, yes. And what I'm going to do right now is I made this little section over here on the top left. What it does is it actually shows me the temporary collection that I have, and it shows that it's off. That's the only entry I have. Now, if I actually went and looked at the view edit, it actually shows as an error because I'm trying to hit the connection over there. But if I just go back, you can basically see that everything is still working over there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close the app all over again. Close it. Let's get that internet connection back. Everything looks good. Let me now open up the app, just the PowerApps. In the PowerApp now, if you see, I can actually start scrolling, which means all the apps are available. But now let me go back to my app over here. I click on the app and watch. When an app opens up, on the top, you see there's some stuff going on over there. I'm actually saving some data over there. And the way I can notice that is if I go into view and edit, the view and edit, now if I just refresh that too, it is actually showing me the data connection, the data that I have in that Azure SQL where this data is being stored. And you now see both the entries. You see that Shane Young, when he was adding an entry with internet connection, and you see my entry when I was adding it offline. So when the app opened, what it does is it goes ahead and actually takes to see what was the offline data that was stored. And now it checks to see, yep, there's an online internet connection. I'm going to go ahead and save that data to the actual data source. This is how the app works. I actually did a live demo for you. Now let's go ahead and let's open up the app on the App Studio, and I'll actually walk you through how the connections were made. I'll also show you, the formulas or the expressions that were done, and I'll actually provide all of that in part of the blog that you'll have in the PowerApps community. So let's take a look at that. So here's the app on PowerApp Studio, and we'll kind of go through it, and I'll actually hit some of the key points over here, and show you how all these expressions and formulas work. So the app, as you can see, it's nothing fancy. Everything is all as it is over there. But I want to first show you that one feature which I talked about, and that was this label over here. So if you notice in the video I just showed you, when the app opens up, it kind of checks to see if you have internet connection. And if you do, then it shows you this green online. And if it doesn't, then it changes red in color. And this is how it happens. So there's two things that I'm doing over here. First is the color. On the color over here, I've put in this formula, which is using that connect object or that connect formula or expression. It's a combination of connection dot connected. That is what PowerApps uses to see, does this app have any internet connection right now? And if it does, then I'm just using a very simple if formula that if it does, make it green in color. If it isn't, then make it red. The second thing is the actual text itself. In the text over here, again, I'm using still the connection.connected formula over there, nothing big, but this one only changes the text. It says that if it is connected, go ahead and change it to online. If it is, then change it. If it isn't, change it to offline. One thing I do want to show you is there's these other options over here. There's connected and there is also metered. Metered is basically just checking in to see, do we have any connections over there or not. Connected is like, okay, there's either it has it or it doesn't have it. That's the basic difference over there. All right, so I showed you that. Now what I want to do is I'll just kind of walk you through the app a little bit. In the app, there's reasons purely for the demonstration that I went ahead and added so many screens, but then I also did some behind the work to kind of test it. So I'll show you what were those behind the scenes. One is in the data table over here. I've actually hidden it, but it'll be helpful to explain it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and make that visible again. And then the other thing over here was this label. And again, the label was used to tell me that is that temporary collection, is it is it empty or is it full? And that was just for me to gauge that, is there any data which was stored in the PowerApp when it was offline? And that's the only reason I had that. But this was just good for me to build the app over there. And so let's take a look at that one first. This is actually a good thing for you guys to do as well when you're building these offline apps to test it. In the offline, in the app itself, I built this temporary collection because that temporary collection is what stores the data when you're actually entering data offline. You need to have a temporary place to store the data in a collection. Now, mind you, that collection by itself is not the sole reason that stores the data. We are actually going to be using what's called as the save data and the load data. collection is just a temporary place to house the data while the app is still being used. That's the key thing. Remember, the collection is a temporary place to store the data while the app is still being used. You close the app, that collection will get refreshed. Remember that. So that's what I did over here. I went ahead and created a simple collection, and I just call that as temp collect. In fact, I'll show you what that is. And here it is, the temp collect. And that's the place where I actually go ahead and store all that information. And that's all I'm seeing is when the app opens up, or when the app is actually being used, I just check to see, hey, is there any information over there? And I'm using the combination of is empty with the app, and I just pick one column just to see if there's any data over there. So that's the whole thing over there. This is also checking to see that collection. That collection, it actually pulls it from the data table. That data table is in fact pulling it straight from that temp collection. If there is any data over there, if it is, if it isn't empty, which means the temp collection is actually is the collection empty equals false, meaning there is data, then I'll actually go and see the data over here. Again, this was only done purely for me to troubleshoot and to understand the functionality of the app. So I built it over here, but previously when I demoed it, you noticed that it wasn't even there. So let's go ahead now and actually just do that same thing. Is I'm going to go ahead and add an entry. So we just see that. When I do that, app opens up, it tells me it's online. I'll go ahead and add an entry. This time I'll put in James Bond 007 Main Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, and doing a live demo online. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to hit submit. This comes up. I'm going to pause here for a second. Here is another big expression and features that I want to show you. So now in the submit button, as you can see over here, I'm going to stop yes. And this is another key kind of formula that you want to know. I'll be copying and pasting this in the blog itself, so you'll actually see it over there. But I want to focus a little bit over here because I've used a combination of if and then the patch to store the data. But again, I use that connect over there. So here's what I'm doing. Basically, in a nutshell, I am just testing to see, do I have connection? If I have a connection, great. Just go ahead and store the data directly on the Azure SQL over there, and everything is good. If I don't have a connection, if I don't have a connection, that's when you want to store it in that temp collect. Temp collect I just showed you, the collection. That's where you want to go ahead and save it. But then, if you don't have any internet connection, and after you've saved it in the temp collect, you want to use the save data. Now, save data is a formula, and it's interesting because the save data, it takes the data from the temp collect and it stores it in a temporary place in the cache, and you need to assign a name to that temporary place. So that's the whole reason you see this over here. See that save data from that temporary collection, which I call temp collect, and save it in this temporary location called temporary. I know the names are just simple enough, but you guys can come up with whatever it is. I just made it simple so you can understand. So that's the process. Again, to check to see is any connection. If the connection equals yes, patch it and save it straight in the Azure SQL. If there isn't, then go ahead and save it in the temp collection, and then after that, go ahead and save it in the local cache. And I name that cache as temporary, and then the rest is pretty much straightforward. I just go ahead and reset the fields, and then send you back to the navigation page over there. So let's just finish that off so you'll see what's going on. I go ahead and click save. You can see it's saving, everything is done. Sends me back into the home screen again. Now in the home screen, I'm going to actually pause over here for a second, because what will happen is I want to go to my Azure SQL, because if you remember in the previous ones, I had these two demos, the offline and the online. I'll just go ahead and hit execute. And you'll see now the James Bond one shows up, which means it is actually being saved. That's just to show you the data connection. So that was the easy part over there, to save the data connection. It checks to see if you have connection, and everything's done over here. The next big one I want you guys to see on is now, say I did not have internet connection. All right, say this thing was right over here, it was offline, and in that submit button, it went ahead and saved in the collection, and then it went ahead and saved it in the cache. So how am I going to get that data back? This is where that other magic happens. So in the home screen, basically on the on start, here's the other big magic that takes place over here. So let me walk you through that one. What this one does is, regardless of if there's any data there or not, I want you to just take the data from that temporary cache location, which is called as temporary, and then put it back in the temp collect. Now, if you're kind of just listening to this for the first time, it might take a little second, a few minutes to wrap this head around. And the key thing for you to understand is that the data in a collection is always temporary. It doesn't save with the app. That's why what I'm doing is the data that was stored in the cache using that name temporary, I'm taking that data back and putting it in the temp collect. And you can do that with that load data formula over there. The next thing I do is I go ahead and do another if to basically check and see the data that came in, was there any data at all to begin with? Is there any information over there? And that's what I'm doing over here, is just to check to see, is it empty? And I put in the not to basically say what I put over there, that if the connection returns and there are records to be written, then perform these this actions over there. What the action basically does is then it goes ahead and then takes every information from, the collect from the data that I've stored in the collection, and then I go ahead and patch that directly. And then after that, I've actually used this little if empty errors to basically just check and see, is the connection still good? And then after that, if it is still good, then go ahead and basically clear that temp collect. The reason you do want to clear that collection after you've retrieved the data from the cache and saved it, that temporary collection, you want to delete it. Otherwise, the next time you save it back over there, to new data, save it back to that collection, then put it back in the cache, you're going to start having duplicates over there. So that's why this last expression was very important. So once again, I want to kind of, talk about this one. This is where the other magic happens, where assuming you've saved data, you went ahead and now loaded that data from the cache. You're checking to see, was there any data, just to be cautious. And then after that, you're using the for all to go ahead and take the data from the temp collection and then store it back into the Azure SQL database. The for all is actually a great formula because it gives you the flexibility that I may have actually been offline for a while and I may have actually made a lot more entries to save that information over there. So that, and then after that, just go ahead and patch everything. So the combination of this formula over here, right back to the formula we showed in this in the button over here, these are the two places. One is to take the data and go ahead and check to see if you're offline, online, and then save it in the cache folder, in the cache place, which we've called that as temporary. And then the next thing is start in the loading again. In the loading, when the app loads or opens, it is checking, takes the data from the cache, puts it back over here, and then saves all the information. Now, the other things I've done in the app, again, was just to build the app. I went ahead and added the delete screen because that's basically just delete is where it just gives me the options to do two things: view to see if there's any existing data, and then delete it. Add screen, I already showed you. View screen, pretty much the standard. I went and added a gallery over there. Edit screen, again, gives me the flexibility to add over there. I also went ahead and created this temp gallery screen. The temp gallery screen would be only for you when you're building it. What the temp gallery does is it's made this collection or the gallery over here just to see, hey, do I have any data left in that temporary collection and what that data is. So that's why when you notice that I was showing you that demo before, I actually went to the temp gallery screen over here. The temp gallery is basically that same icon over here. I just went in to go ahead and check to see if there's any data stored over there. So all in all, this is basically how this app works. Again, key thing is my app actually uses a combination of three things. It uses the combination of the offline connection, using that connection formula over there. It also goes ahead and uses the save data and the load data. Those are the two big formulas that we're using. And then also you need to have at least one collection to temporarily store the data. So it was a combination of all of these things that I was able to build this app successfully. And once again, I'll provide this information to you, especially some screenshots. But the key things you want to know are these two formulas over here, because it's a combination of the collections plus that cache folder or the cache location where you're saving it, which in this case was temporary. So hope this helped. Hope you guys understood how this is, and keep power apping. Thanks.